Nobody told Ryan that a dragon egg was going to hatch in his storage unit. He found out the same way he found out about most things on Orville 9, alone, quietly, without anyone to share the moment with. He had gone in to get soil testing kits. What he got instead was a pile of broken gold shell on his floor, a cloud of warm steam that smelled like burning copper, and something very small staring at him from behind a collapsed crate. It was the size of a house cat. Its scales were the color of old coins, a deep, burnished gold with streaks of copper running along the spine. Its eyes were amber, nearly orange, and they were wide open and locked onto him with the kind of focus that made Ryan feel like he was being counted. He did not scream. He did not reach for anything. He stood very still, the way he always stood when he encountered something new in the field, weight balanced, hands at his sides, breathing slow. The hatchling tilted its head. Ryan tilted his head back. It blinked. He blinked. Then he sat down on the floor, cross-legged, about 2 meters away, and waited. He was good at waiting. He spent most of his days waiting for plants to do things. A dragon hatchling was not so different, he decided. Small, new, confused about where it was. He knew that feeling. He did not reach out. He did not make sounds. He just sat there, breathing, slow and steady, and let the hatchling decide what it wanted to do. It took 11 minutes. He counted. Then she walked to him, stepped right over his knee and pressed her small, warm body against his ribs and made a sound somewhere between a purr and a kettle boiling. He put one hand gently along her back. Her scales were warm. She stopped shaking. He did not know, at the time, that Orovin hatchling's imprint in the first hour. He did not know that his slow breath, his low posture, his open hands, all of it was hitting every instinctual trigger their kind carried in their blood from before history. He did not know that what he had just done, without trying, was give a newborn dragon every possible signal that said, safe. He found all of that out 3 days later when Director Bale arrived. Bale was old, even for an Orovin. Tall, silver-scaled, with the kind of stillness that powerful things develop over centuries. He came with 6 handlers and a containment carrier and a look on his face that said this would be fast and simple. It was not fast. It was not simple. Selene, which was the name on the clutch record, the name that would become hers, took one look at the handlers reaching for her and screamed. Not growled, not hissed, screamed, in a frequency that cracked 2 equipment panels and sent every person in the room stumbling backward with their hands over their ears. Then she ran back to Ryan and wrapped herself around his arm. Ryan looked at Bale. Bale looked at Ryan. She has imprinted, Bale said. His voice was perfectly flat. I didn't mean for that to happen, Ryan said. Obviously. Bale watched the hatchling press her face under Ryan's chin. Something moved behind his eyes, too quickly to read. And yet, it took 2 hours of tense back and forth before they reached an arrangement. Selene would remain on Orville 9 with Ryan. Handlers would visit weekly. Bale would review the situation in 90 days. Ryan said he would do his best. He was not entirely sure what his best looked like in this situation. Selene had no such doubts. She followed him to the greenhouse that same afternoon. She watched him water a row of seedlings with the same focused amber stare she had used on him in the storage unit. After a while, she stepped close to the smallest plant and blew a tiny, warm breath across its leaves. Ryan watched her do it. She looked at him like she was waiting for his judgment. Good, he said quietly. Gentle is right. She did it to the next one. He let her. She began following his routine the way she had memorized it. Which shelf first, which light panels to check, which readings to log. She did not knock things over. She was careful in a way that surprised him, given how new she was to the world. Bale's surveillance drone, which Ryan had been told about and had no objection to, recorded all of it. Bale reviewed the footage each night from his ship. He told no one what he thought of it. But on day 4 he added a note to the official record. Just one line. It read, "The hatchling is not following him out of dependence. She is studying him." Ryan would not see that note for 2 years. By then, he would understand why it mattered. But that was later. Right now, he had a small dragon asleep on his workbench, curled around the base of a soil monitor, scales rising and falling slowly in the greenhouse warmth. He finished his reports. He turned off the overhead light and left the grow lamps on, soft and amber. She looked, he thought, like she belonged there. He did not yet understand that she had already decided she did. 3 months passed the way quiet months do, slowly in the living, quickly in the memory. Solen grew. Not fast, not dramatically, but steadily, the way a plant grows when it has good soil and enough light. She was the size of a medium dog now, copper gold scales brighter than when she had hatched, and she had learned to move through the research station without breaking anything, which Ryan considered a genuine achievement. She had also learned to understand roughly 40 words in his language. Not to speak them, just to understand. She knew stop, gentle, wait, good, and come. She also knew no, which she understood perfectly and chose to acknowledge only when she felt like it. Dr. Fail, the Orevan researcher Bale had assigned to observe them, called this selective comprehension. Ryan called it having a personality. He was not wrong. Ryan had a personality too, a quiet one, the kind that most people on the station took for coldness. He was not cold. He was simply a person who had learned early that most feelings did not need an audience. He did his work. He ate alone. He comed his family on the same day each week, same time, same bench in the station's eastern corridor. Solen had started coming with him to those calls. She would sit beside him and watch the screen with the same focused attention she gave everything, and his family had gotten used to her being there. His sister Nara, especially, had taken to waving at her. Solen never waved back, but she always moved closer to the screen when Nara appeared. She was cataloging. That was what she did. The message came on a Tuesday. It came through official channels, which was how Ryan knew something was wrong before he even opened it. His family did not use official channels. They used the personal relay, the one with the delay and the poor audio and the familiar background noise of their home. He read it in the communication room. He read it twice. Then he folded the data screen and put it in his pocket and stood there for a moment, very still. Nara had been sick for several months, the message said. She had not wanted to worry him. It had moved fast at the end. She had not wanted him to rush home for nothing, the message said, as if coming home would have been nothing. He found the storage bay the same way he always found places to be alone, by accident, by walking without direction until somewhere felt right. It was the same bay where Solen had hatched. He did not plan that. It just happened. He sat down against the far wall, knees pulled up, face in his hands. He did not know Solen was there. She had followed him from the communication room without making a sound, which she was capable of when she chose to be. She had been asleep behind a stack of survey crates. She was awake now, watching. She had seen Ryan tired. She had seen him focused, careful, gentle, frustrated once when a route scan failed 3 times in a row. She had seen every version of him that his daily routine offered. She had not seen this. His shoulders were shaking. Small movements, tightly controlled, like he was trying to keep something inside that kept pushing out. His breath came in careful pieces, each one a small effort. And then, quietly, without any drama at all, he stopped trying to hold it together and just let himself grieve. She did not understand what she was seeing. Orevan did not weep. When they lost someone, they went silent or they raged, and both were private, and neither looked like this. This looked like something coming apart at the seams while simultaneously trying to keep the seams in place, and she had no framework for it. She approached slowly, slowly enough that he would have heard her if he had been listening. He was not listening. She sniffed him, salt, and something warmer underneath, and the particular frequency of a living thing in pain. She climbed into his lap. He made a sound, surprise, maybe, and then his arms came around her and he held on, and she pressed herself against his chest and stayed very still while he cried into her scales. She did not move for a long time. When he finally went quiet, he kept his arms around her. She could feel his breathing slow. She could feel his heart, which beat strangely fast for a creature his size. She memorized it, the rhythm of it, the particular sound of a human who had stopped pretending. Bale reviewed the surveillance footage that evening, as he always did. He stopped the recording at the moment she climbed into Ryan's lap. He watched it 3 times. He did not make notes. Not that night. He sat in his chair on his ship and watched a human cry and a hatchling refuse to look away, and he felt something shift in the back of his mind, some old certainty quietly rearranging itself. Dr. Fail found him there the next morning and asked what he was looking at. He turned the screen toward her without a word. She watched for a while. Then she said, softly. She didn't leave. No, Bale said. She could have. She wasn't trapped. No. Phil sat down. In 40 years of research, I have never seen an Orevan hatchling choose to stay with a grieving creature it was not bonded to by blood. She paused. What does that tell us? Bill was quiet for a long moment. It tells us, he said finally, that she has already decided he is hers. Down on the station, Ryan was back in the greenhouse. Solène followed at his heel, closer than usual. Her eyes moved over every person who passed him in the corridor. Her gaze was quiet, careful, and very, very patient. She was making a list. She just had not told anyone yet. The Vorin had been pushing at the frontier for 2 years before they pushed hard enough for anyone to notice. They were a fleet-heavy species, practical and territorial, with a long history of acquiring things through agreements that the other side did not fully understand until it was too late. They had been issuing survey requests to the human colonies along the outer rim, polite language for showing up with armed ships and measuring things with instruments that had no business measuring a colony's power output and defensive range. Station Chief Priya had filed 17 complaints with the Galactic Collective. 14 had been acknowledged. 3 had received responses, all of which said, in different polite ways, that the situation was being monitored. The situation, as it turned out, was not being monitored closely enough. The survey team came back on a cold Thursday. Ryan came back with them. He walked into the station with a split lip, a bruised jaw, and the careful movement of a man with ribs that hurt when he breathed too deeply. He told Priya it had been a misunderstanding. He used the word misunderstanding twice, which was how she knew he was doing the thing he always did, making himself smaller so the situation would not grow. She filed a report anyway. She was good at her job. Ryan went to the medical bay, got his ribs wrapped, said thank you, and walked back to the greenhouse. Solène was waiting outside the door. She was the size of a large dog now, almost to his hip. Her scales had deepened in color. The copper lines along her spine had spread, and in certain light, she looked almost like something forged rather than born. She watched him walk toward her, and she went very, very still. Not the still of sleep, or rest, or waiting for something good. The still of a predator looking at something it has already decided about. She looked at his lip, at the way he held his side when he bent to unlock the door, at the careful angle of his steps. He said her name. She looked at his face. He gave her the signal that meant I'm fine, the one she had learned months ago, an open hand, relaxed. She stared at his hand for a moment longer than usual. Then she went inside and ate her evening meal and curled up on her bench and closed her eyes. He thought she had accepted it. He was wrong. She was gone in the morning. Not missing. She left tracks, which the station sensors confirmed. She had moved through the maintenance shafts on the east side of the landing bays, areas she had been exploring for months under the pretense of curiosity, which, to be fair, had always been genuine. She was curious. She was also, it turned out, extremely observant. The Vorin diplomatic shuttle had been docked for 6 days, awaiting clearance to depart while the complaint paperwork processed. It was a large, well-equipped vessel with 4 redundant navigation systems, 2 communication backups, and a crew of 12 who considered themselves reasonably secure. They were in the station's main hall filing departure documents when Solène went into their ship through an access panel that required 3 separate tools to open from the outside. She had been watching a maintenance worker use those tools for 2 months. 6 hours later, she came back through the same panel and returned to the greenhouse, and was asleep on her bench when Ryan arrived at work. The Vorin found out what had happened when they went to leave. Every navigation system was down. Not glitched, gone. Primary relay, secondary relay, tertiary backup, manual override, and the emergency stellar positioning unit that was bolted to the inner hull in a casing that required a welding torch to access. All of it. Gone, or bent, or precisely disconnected in a way that required specialist parts to fix. The shuttle was not going anywhere for 9 days. No one could prove it was her. There were no claw marks. No damage to the hull. No signs of forced entry because she had not forced anything. She had simply understood the systems and undone them, quietly, with the patience of something that had been watching and learning for a very long time. Priya put the pieces together in about 4 hours. She did not tell the Vorin. She did tell Ryan. He sat in her office for a while without speaking. Then he went back to the greenhouse and sat down on the floor in front of Solène's bench. She opened one eye. He talked to her quietly, the way he always talked. Low, even, no sudden rises in tone. He told her that he understood. He told her that what she did was not the right way to handle it. He told her that she could make things harder for people he cared about. He told her this was not how it worked. She looked at him the whole time. When he was done, she leaned forward and licked the back of his hand very slowly, from wrist to knuckle. Then she went back to sleep. He sat there for a moment. He was not sure whether that had been agreement or acknowledgement, or simply the Oravan version of I hear you and I disagree, but I respect that you said it. Bale arrived 3 days later, summoned by the Vorin complaint. He inspected the shuttle. He interviewed the crew. He reviewed the sensor logs with the expression of a person doing math in their head and not particularly liking the answer. Then he went to the greenhouse. Solène was sitting in a beam of light from the overhead panel, scales catching it in a way that made her look like hammered gold. She watched Bale walk in. She did not move. He stood there for a moment, looking at her. Then he turned around and walked back out without saying anything. He recorded his assessment that night. The official version said the cause of the shuttle damage was undetermined, possibly a fault in the docking bay's environmental system. The unofficial version, which he wrote in a separate file he kept private, was shorter. It said, she warned them. They should have listened. The fleet came in at midday, which was not subtle. 11 Vorin warships dropped out of transit in a loose formation above Orville 9. Engines cooling in the dark, weapons inactive but present the way a closed fist is present. Not a threat exactly, just a shape that everyone in the room understands. Admiral Greth's message came an hour later. Polite language around an impolite demand. The colony would sign a resource extraction agreement within 48 hours, or the Dominion would be forced to take steps to protect its interests in the region. No specifics about what those steps were. No specifics was the point. Priya called an emergency meeting. She was calm, which was more unsettling than anger would have been. We need time, she said. 48 hours to get a collective response is not realistic. We need to stretch that window. The room looked at each other. Nobody volunteered. Ryan, who was in the meeting because Priya had stopped pretending his diplomatic instincts did not exist, raised his hand slightly. I'll go. Priya looked at him. Greth's flagship. Yes. Alone. A crowd would feel like a challenge. One person feels like a question. She looked at him for a long moment. She knew him well enough to know this was not bravery. He was not performing courage for the room. He was simply doing math and arriving at the only answer that made sense to him. Take a recorder, she said. Everything on record. He nodded. He left the room. He stopped in the greenhouse on the way. Solène was awake, which she usually was when something was happening on the station she could sense, but not yet locate. She read situations through vibration, through shifts in air pressure, through the particular rhythm of footsteps that meant people were moving with purpose. Ryan told her where he was going. He did not have to. She could not fully understand, but he told her anyway, because he always did. She listened with her full amber attention. He showed her the open hand signal. I'm fine. Then he locked the greenhouse from the outside. She began working on the lock 30 seconds after he left. Greth's ship was enormous in the way that things are enormous when they are built specifically to impress. Ryan was taken aboard by 2 soldiers who did not speak to him, walked through corridors lined with Vorin military insignia, and brought to a hall that was clearly designed for audiences. High ceiling, Greth's chair elevated, his staff arranged to either side. Greth himself was tall, silver-plated, with the particular confidence of a person who had never been in a room where the outcome was uncertain. He looked at Ryan the way someone looks at something that is trying to explain why it exists. Ryan stood in the center of the room and did not fidget. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. Greth spoke for most of it. He described the colony's resources in the way one describes something that already belongs to them. He described human frontier policy as charming but naive. He described the Galactic Collective's protections as historical artifacts with limited modern application. He said the words reasonable arrangement so many times they stopped meaning anything. Ryan asked questions. Careful ones. The kind of questions that required long answers. He took notes on his personal recorder. He said I understand when he did not agree, because understanding and agreement are different things, and Greth did not seem to know the difference. When Greth finally paused, Ryan thanked him for his time and said he would bring the offer to Station Chief Priya. Greth laughed, which was not kind. There is no negotiation, botanist. There is acceptance, or there is demonstration. Ryan looked at him for a moment. I'll relay that, he said. He was returned to the station without further incident. He went directly to Priya's office and gave her a full account, including the parts where Greth's officers had laughed, including the part where Greth had called the colony a footnote. All of it on record. Priya began transmitting to the collective immediately. Meanwhile, in the lower cargo bay of a supply drone that had been dispatched to the flagship as part of standard docking protocol, something gold and copper scaled pressed itself flat against the inner wall and waited for the drone to dock and the hatch to open. Selene had been on the flagship for 6 hours before anyone knew she was missing. She did not attack anyone. She did not breathe fire, which she was beginning to be capable of in small amounts. She moved through the ship the way she moved through the greenhouse, slowly, carefully, with the complete attention of something that is learning. She mapped the weapons coupling on Deck 4. She found the communication array on Deck 7 and studied its junctions for 40 minutes. She located the hangar where the fighter craft were stored, counted them, and noted the door mechanisms. She found the bridge through ventilation and looked at it from above for a long time. Then she found a warm space near the engine intake manifold, and she curled up there, and she slept, tucked inside the bones of the ship, while 11 warships floated overhead, and an admiral believed he had already won. Back on the station, Ryan sat on his bunk. He was tired. He did not sleep. He thought about Nara for a while, the way he always did when things felt heavy. Then he thought about the greenhouse, about the work that needed doing, about the particular way the seedlings in row 7 had begun to lean toward the east light panel and needed rotating. He did not know where Selene was. He assumed she was in the greenhouse. He told himself he would check in the morning. He did not feel afraid, exactly. He felt the particular stillness of someone who has done the thing they could do and is now waiting for the world to do the thing it will do. He did not know that inside the Voran flagship, his dragon had already made her decision. She had already walked the whole of it. She already knew where everything was. She was just waiting too. The order came at dawn, station time. Admiral Greth gave it quietly, the way powerful people give orders they are certain about. Weapons systems online. Targeting solution for the colony's outer communication array. One shot, clean, precise, not enough to kill anyone. Just enough to teach everyone what a demonstration felt like. The weapons crew began the startup sequence. It takes 4 minutes to bring a warship's primary systems from standby to active. In those 4 minutes, a dozen lights came on across the flagship's interior grid, a dozen system checks ran, and the low hum of charging power cells moved through the hull like a held breath. Selene felt it through her scales. She had been in the engine space for 9 hours. She was awake the moment the vibration changed. She lifted her head, and her eyes, fully gold now, with no amber left in them, went wide, and then she was moving. She went to Deck 4 first. The weapons coupling was a system of 6 interlocking relay nodes, each one with a primary connection and a backup. She had studied it for 40 minutes the night before. She knew which ones mattered and in what order. She hit the first node at full speed, driving her shoulder into the junction housing. It cracked. She hit the second with her tail. It bent. The third through sixth took her 40 seconds combined, and she did not slow down once. The weapons system went dead at the 3-minute mark. The crew had 1 minute of confusion before they understood the system had not glitched. It was physically gone. She was already on Deck 7. The communication array was more delicate. She did not use force there. She used her claws, very carefully, the way she used them in the greenhouse when she needed to be gentle. She disconnected the main relay from its housing. She found the backup transmitter and removed the connecting pins with her teeth, one by one. She left the emergency distress signal untouched, which meant the ship could only broadcast one thing, its own call for help. The flagship went dark to the outside galaxy in under 2 minutes. She went to the hangar on Deck 9. There were 7 fighter craft, docked in a row. She did not damage the ships. She went to the bay doors, massive mechanical systems with manual and automatic controls, and she found the release mechanism for the locking arms, and she shoved them, hard, at an angle she had calculated the night before. 6 of the 7 docking arms jammed. 6 ships were not going anywhere. The 7th she left alone. One was not a fleet. Navigator Doss was in the corridor outside the hangar when she came out of the service hatch. He was 22 years old and had been in the Dominion Navy for 3 years and had never, in all his training, been prepared for what he was looking at. A gold and copper dragon the size of a large horse came out of the wall, glanced at him once with calm golden eyes, and walked past him toward the forward corridor. He said, in his deposition 6 weeks later. She looked at me like I was a door she had already decided not to open. She walked to the bridge. The bridge crew saw her coming through the forward corridor display. Greth had 15 seconds to do something before she arrived. He shouted orders. The guards raised weapons. She came through the bridge entrance, looked at the weapons pointed at her, and kept walking. She was not going to be shot by anything on that ship. She knew that. They knew it too. In the place where bodies know things before minds catch up. She was bigger than she had been a month ago. Her scales were catching the emergency lighting and throwing it back at them in fragments of copper and gold. She was not running. She was not flinching. She moved through the bridge like a weather system, not choosing to be unstoppable, simply being it. She stopped in front of Greth's chair. She sat down. She looked at him. That was all. She did not breathe fire. She did not roar. She did not touch him. She sat 3 meters away from the most powerful military officer in the sector, and she looked at him with the patient, specific focus of a creature that had already done everything it needed to do, and was now simply waiting for him to understand. For 40 minutes, nobody on that bridge could move her. They tried. She did not engage with any of it. She simply continued to look at Greth, and he continued to look back at her, and the bridge was very quiet except for the soft hiss of the ship's distress signal broadcasting itself out into the dark. Bale received the signal on his monitoring vessel 40 minutes into the standoff. He came aboard quickly and legally, under emergency docking rights. When he reached the bridge and saw Solène sitting in front of Greth's chair, calm as a stone, he stopped walking. He stood there for a moment. Then he activated his legal authority channel and invoked the Orevan Accord, an agreement older than the Dominion by 4 centuries, which prohibited hostile action against a species in active bond with an Orevan. A bond Bale had officially registered that morning, before he knew it would matter today, because the paperwork had been sitting on his desk for 3 weeks, and something had finally made him file it. The fleet stood down. Greth had no political ground left to stand on. Solène left the bridge. She found the supply drone that had brought her aboard, unlocked the hold with her teeth, and was back on the station before sunset. She went straight to the greenhouse. Ryan was standing in the middle of it, trying to understand what had just happened via Priya's rapid and slightly breathless account. He turned when he heard the door. Solène headbutted him. Not gently. She drove her whole head into his midsection hard enough to knock him back into a shelf, which rattled 3 weeks of careful seedling arrangement. He laughed. It was sudden and real and the first laugh he'd had in weeks, and she pressed her warm, enormous head against his chest, and he put both arms around her, and she made the sound that was somewhere between a purr and a boiling kettle. In his official deposition, Navigator Doss was asked one question above all others. What did the dragon want? He was quiet for a long time. I think, he said, she wanted the Admiral to know she had already won, before he ever fired. The review took 6 weeks. In that time, Admiral Greth was stripped of his frontier command. The Voran Dominion lost its expansion charter for the Outer Rim. 3 separate collective councils issued formal recognition of Orville 9 as a protected settlement under the Orevan Accord. 14 journalists filed requests to interview the dragon. All 14 were declined, because Solène could not be interviewed and Ryan did not want to be. He told Priya it was not his story to tell. She disagreed. He did not change his mind. The day that mattered most happened quietly, the way the days that matter most usually do. Director Bale called a session of the Orevan Elder Council. He had done this 11 times in his life. Each time had concerned something significant. The elders knew this. They came without delay. There were 9 of them, ancient and silver-scaled and careful, seated in a half-circle in the Elder Hall on the Orevan diplomatic station. Bale stood at the center and presented his report without ceremony. He had never been a person for ceremony. Then he played the footage. Not the footage of the flagship. Not the footage of Solène walking through the bridge crew like they were weather. He played the footage from the storage bay 11 months earlier, on a quiet evening on Orville 9. The 9 elders watched a human sit down against a wall and grieve. They watched a hatchling approach without being asked. They watched a creature that could not understand weeping choose, without hesitation, to stay. The hall was very quiet when it ended. Dr. Fail spoke next. She had spent 11 months building her research. She had a great deal of data, a great many careful observations, and one conclusion that she had written and rewritten 9 times because she was not sure how to say it without sounding like she had lost her scientific objectivity. She said it plainly in the end. The human, she said, in the moment of deepest pain, with no way of knowing what the hatchling would do, chose to trust. He did not hide. He did not protect himself. He simply stayed present, vulnerable, in front of something that could have been a threat. She looked at the council. In 40 years of research, I have never once encountered an Orevan hatchling that imprinted outside its species. I have never encountered one that chose to bond with a being it had known for less than a season. She paused. I believe Solène saw something in that storage bay that activated every protective instinct her species carries. Not because the human was weak, but because he trusted without condition. And to an Orevan hatchling, that kind of trust, offered openly, without defense, is the most rare and precious thing in the world. One of the elder council members, an ancient female named Sovereign who had not spoken publicly in 3 years, leaned forward. And the hatchling's response? Sovereign asked. She declared him hers, Fail said simply. And then she spent the next 11 months making certain the galaxy understood what that meant. The council deliberated for 4 hours. Solène was not present for the deliberation. She was in the greenhouse, asleep on Ryan's feet while he wrote up his latest root density reports. She had gotten very large. Her tail went under 2 shelves and her wing, still mostly folded, pressed against the eastern glass. She fit in the greenhouse the way she had always fit, by deciding she did, and not worrying further about it. The council reached its decision. Solène was formally recognized as a bonded protector, the oldest and most significant designation in Orevan tradition, given to those who had demonstrated protection of another life at personal risk and without command. The last one had been recognized 412 years ago. No bonded protector had ever been bonded to a non-Orevan. Vale went to Orville 9 to deliver the news in person. He found Ryan at the eastern workbench, rotating seedlings. He sat down on a supply crate, which he did not like but accepted because there was nowhere else to sit, and he told Ryan everything. The footage, the council, the formal recognition, what it meant in legal and diplomatic terms, what it meant in older terms. Ryan listened without interrupting, which Bale had come to understand was simply how he processed information. When Bale was finished, Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I didn't know she was watching. In the storage bay. I didn't know she was there. Yes, Bale said. I wasn't doing anything. I was just there. Bale looked at him for a long moment. I have been studying her for 11 months, he said, and I have come to believe that just being there is the thing she has never been able to look away from. Ryan did not say anything to that, but he looked down at Solène, who was now awake and watching him with her full amber attention, the way she always did when she sensed he was thinking about something important. He put his hand on her head. She closed her eyes. The ceremony was 3 days later. Vale had insisted on some ceremony, and Solène had allowed it with the grace of someone tolerating something they find mildly unnecessary but understand is important to others. She sat through the formal address. She sat through the reading of the designation. She sat through Bale placing a traditional honor cord around her neck, gold threaded with copper, made to match her scales. Then she stole his ceremonial sash. Not accidentally. She waited until he had turned back to the council, reached forward, took the sash cleanly off his shoulder with her teeth, and walked with great dignity to the far corner of the room, where she sat down and chewed one end of it thoughtfully. Not a single person in the Elder Hall mentioned it in the official record. Bale filed a separate note in his private file. She has not changed. Afterward, Ryan and Solène went back to Orville 9 on the regular transport, the same way they had come. She took up most of the cargo bay. He sat against her side and read through his field reports, and she slept with her chin on his knee. Somewhere in the Vorin archives, in a folder attached to the incident report for the flagship engagement, Navigator Doss had written a single line in the margin. It was not part of the official filing. It was not addressed to anyone. It was simply something he had needed to write down. It said, Do not move against the humans. Not because they are strong, because something out there loves them, and it is paying attention. Back on the station, in a greenhouse full of seedlings leaning toward the light, Solène slept. She had decided this was hers. She had decided a long time ago. And the galaxy, slowly, was beginning to understand what that meant.